So yeah, during the 76 season, people could see that you guys were coming, that you guys were building something under Coach Hayes in his first year.
Yeah,
You guys, so you have the game against A&T, right? And for doing my research, the series with A&T was off and on early in the 40s and 50s in the start of the program. Basically, they looked at WSSU as practice. Um,
right.
I talked to Al Roseborough, who played back in the 60s, and he told me something that made a lot of sense when I saw it, and that was that A&T, that back then they had to play both ways,
Yeah,
whereas A&T had enough players to where this was when people were just starting to not have to play both ways as much, but Winston didn't have enough guys to really be able to compete if they didn't play both ways. And A&T, their guys could really just play offense or defense. So I could see how that
right.
would be an advantage.
Wow.
Um, so they won the first 17, 18 games in the series. They cut the series off when the MEAC was formed. And then Coach Hayes gets them to get a game. I guess he felt like you guys are ready. So we get to 1977, that game over in Greensboro, and tell me what you remember about that game, as we see what's going, how things built forward.
Stephen, it was a big game. It was some interesting things that occurred. And one of my teammates was just talking today. He said, Auntie, um, everybody wanted to win. We wanted to win. They wanted to win. At that time, Auntie had some new coaches, and two of the coaches were Caucasian coaches. And I remember we were worried about them. That was our Goliath, but we found out they were worried about us.
Mm,
Stephen, they sent a coach to our practice,
mm,
and he was in some wooded area. There was a young kid, riding his bicycle down
wow.
lower fields, down by the lower fields,
Hmm.
rode his bike over toward Coach Hayes and told them, he said, there's a man over in those weeds watching y'all practice.
Wow.
Coach Hayes secretly called, blew the whistle. He called us together like a team, and he was saying, "Don't look over." He said, "This young boy says there's a coach in the weeds who's a white coach watching y'all practice." Coach Hayes says, "This is what we're going to do. We're going to gradually move our practice area toward those weeds, and when I blow the whistle, we're going to run over and get them out." And sure enough, we kept moving closer to the weeds. He blew that whistle. We ran over. They pulled them out. It was the white assistant coach at A&T. And
Wow.
sure enough, I just had one of my friends to send me the picture from the football team yearbook, and they had two white coaches at A&T that year. So that gave us confidence that they were worried about us just as
Right.
much should have been worried about them. Coach Hayes told them, "We're not going to do anything to you, but you just go over and tell them that we coming and we're going to be ready." And from that point on, it was on, brother. It was
Wow.
on. I never knew who the coaches were, but like I said, about a month ago, I got a picture from Auntie's yearbook, and sure enough, they had two white coaches during that time. I think Coach Hayes might have taken what he had written down,
Hmm.
and basically, I think he told them, "Tell them we coming. We're going to be there." Can you believe that?
Wow. So Coach Hayes and not Deion Sanders is the starter of We Coming.
not
I
not Dion. You know what I mean? Coach Bill Hayes let them know we coming, but that gave us confidence. They're worried about little us. But Jim McKinley was coming from Central State to the CIAA MEAC area. He probably didn't know what he was getting into, So they sent one of their coaches over, and man, some people talk. We talk about that just about every year.
Mhm.
That playing the A&T, that comes up about that coach.
Right, right. Yeah. So, I wasn't around then. I was born a little bit later, but my parents were still probably in going to middle school actually. But I do do have this internet, this miracle of the internet where we can kind of have a time machine. And so I have the headline from that game, and it says Rams rout A&T 33-14.
Yes.
Yeah, it says headline says what could easily be one of the most stunning upsets in the opening weekend of college football. Winston-Salem State played with exceptional poise and humbled highly regarded North Carolina A&T 33-14 last night at Memorial Stadium. The first thing I want to say, said second-year Ram coach Bill Hayes, is welcome Jim McKinley to North Carolina football. He said that they go 11-0 this year. Obviously, they didn't have much respect for North Carolina football.
Right.
Um, yeah. Just talk about this. I know you mentioned
Yeah.
Cornelius Washington.
Oh,
Says in the first quarter he stole a tip pass that led to the first touchdown of the game, uh, which ended up being a 22-yard pass from Kermit Blunt to running back Randy Bolton. That is out of all your football career. Is that still one of the plays that sticks out there? I gotta feel like it is.
uh, the touchdown later, I was able to score a touchdown in that game, but they let us hang around too long. You know what I mean? Ellsworth Turner was a great quarterback they had. He was having difficulty, and he played probably against the best safety in the country in
Mm-hmm.
D football, and Cornelius Washington, uh,
Mm-hmm.
who had a shot with Chicago Bears as well, one of the greatest athletes in school history. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so they let us hang around. Then we started scoring. They couldn't cover the backs coming out of the backfield. I think McKinley mentioned that in the article as
Mm-hmm.
well. 25 yards, turn a 5 yard catch into a 25, 30 yard gain. We'll drive it down and punch it in from 2 yards. You might have had one of those pitches where me and the defensive back are eyeing each other out, but you can't win against, well, I wasn't going to let you win against me like that end zone. You know what I mean? Coach Hayes taught us that hard running, and I think Timmy went in as well, and the defense played remarkable, and Robert Weeks in that offensive line. See, Robert Weeks was All-American center for us, just like Coach Hayes was. They
Mm-hmm.
they just blocked, and it was just effortless. And Winston-Salem erupted in Greensboro, all the way back to Winston-Salem. People were just hooting, and man, it was crazy. When we got back, the whole campus was there. It was on. It was on for 22 straight wins almost over 2 years in a national semifinal post. It was on after that A&T game. And guess what? We had to do it again the following year, Stephen. But this
Yeah.
time we
Yeah.
break couldn't fit, you know? We had to go
Yeah.
to wait.
Yeah, and just so people know how lopsided, how big that win was, and why it was so big. I look at the right before you guys won that first game. It says the closest Winston-Salem State has come to a victory against the MEAC opponent was the 1942 loss in 1958. On
Wow.
average, though, as scores were in the series have been lopsided. The Aggies have scored 645 points to
Wow.
Winston-Salem's 150 in 18 games.
Yes. That
So
that was crazy. I still, when we get together, we still talk about that night at the old baseball field. It was packed. I don't know where people were sitting, but I know it was packed. Cars everywhere. It was packed, and I think they A&T was, had that spirit at first. Then they just sort of died down after we took control of the game. To be honest with you, it never was really close except the first 5 minutes of the game, I think. And
yeah, no,
Kermit Blunt magic as a quarterback with that veer offense.
yeah, no doubt. And you talk about it. You guys went on to go 11-0 that season, and win the CIAA title, the first in school history, first of what is now 12, which is the most amongst current schools. And then you guys, the next year, as you said, this is back when A&T gave WSSU a return game, right?
Right.
Uh, it was time for you guys to play again, and it ended up you guys ended up playing not at Bowman Gray, but you guys ended up playing there at Wake Forest. Just talk about that and the lead into that game.
Boy, you can just feel the tension prior to that, and the pride of the city of Winston-Salem and the people coming down for A&T. I think really A&T thought they were going to win. They had our number going into that game. The stadium was full. It looked like 30,000 plus. It was full all the way to the top, and Spirit, the bands were playing, and red was on one side and blue and gold on the other side. The field was beautiful, manicured field, and we were just so excited to be in that atmosphere. And I think we started off on them pretty early, and it was a 25-7 win, I think, but they never really threatened us. They could not catch up with that Veer offense.
Right. Yeah, no doubt about it. I saw that their Coach McKinley, ran the Veer as well, but obviously, I mean, you guys just had some horses, yourself, Tim Newsom, also Arrington Jones,
Yeah,
who's gone on to have a great career as a player and a coach.
right.
Just yeah, like you said, 25-7 was the final score of the game. But how and I'm reading a little bit of the article from the Winston-Salem Journal, and no, my friend John Dell was not covering you guys at that point. But it says that talked about how Kermit and your line were in control. Um, says, what does it say? It says we couldn't handle the veer. We couldn't run the way that we wanted to, but Blunt sure opened up things in a hurry, didn't he? Says
Yes.
on WSSU's first series, Blunt hit Billy Diggs with a 22-yard sideline pass, Bill Morrell with a 10-yarder, and froze the Aggies with the nifty 13-yard quarterback draw before a Randy Bolton. Well, they probably forgot that. A fumble halted the drive at A&T 17.
That's
Um, but yeah, it says as far as Hayes was concerned, Blunt and not the Rams offensive line was in control. The guys that were great were on our offensive line, or offensive or defensive linemen and linebackers. We shoved that veer down their throats. Yeah, yeah.
that's right. That is right. Um, I I scored that game, and
Mhm.
what I remember, I was getting ready to break away, Stephen. That might have been, and it was so hot and humid. One of their defensive backs just touched my arm. I was
Mhm.
switching, and it fell on the ground, and they recovered. We would have won 30 something to 7. I was getting ready to take it to the house about 60. And, I remember that like yesterday. But it was a good win, and a lot of us scored, and the defense played great. And once again, they had those great players on defense. Dwayne Board, San Francisco 49er, great
Mhm.
George Small, a linebacker, a huge linebacker. And they had great players all over the place, but they just couldn't, I don't know, they just couldn't stop it.
Yeah, yeah. And when you think, and again, you guys, again, being part of history, the first team to beat them, and then also to go back and do it in Winston-Salem as well. Since then, the series, A&T still has the lead. Again, it's quite an insurmountable, not insurmountable, but quite a mountain to climb. But I think WSSU is maybe 12 and 17 since then. And, now given the fact that with them being Division I and the scholarship offers, it can they got to quite an advantage of it, but it's kind of ebbs and flows on it. I know when I was at school back in the 2000s, we played against them, and so it was a great rivalry, and we haven't had it for over a decade, and looking forward into coming into next week. Just what are your thoughts as you see this game coming back, and what type of pride does it ignite? Going against them because let's be honest, in North Carolina we got a lot of HBCUs.
Yeah,
We all feel that our school is the best, but obviously North Carolina A&T has always been the biggest school.
right.
They've always, had certain advantages, and there's just so many of them. They do a lot of talking when they get together. But what are these two programs? What do you think the camaraderie is between these two programs, and how important do you think this is for HBCU football in North Carolina, particularly?
Oh, I think it's very important. Over the past few years, I've gotten a chance to know some of the young men that came and played for Coach Hayes at A&T after I left. They're great guys. They love their school just like we loved ours. We've been at events where they've come together with us to honor Coach Hayes, etc. They're great leaders and great men, etc. I would hate to see someone lose, you know. A lot of our Charlotte A&T football players were guys that I watched play. They didn't know I was watching them. I'm much older, but I watched them. Maceo Bolton, the great quarterback from A&T, is one of the guys that I've sort of watched as he played up there as well. It's going to be a tough battle. They've got a lot of pride. I've got to get at school. They've got a lot of pride, but I want them to know Winston has a lot of pride too. And it's a battle, and for our guys, I hope Coach Massey lets them know it can be done. I know it can be done. And it's very eerie this year. You said we lost 6 games by less than 20 points.
Mm-hmm.
In 76, guess what? They lost about 6 games last year, less than 20 points as well. So it's very eerie, you know? It's very eerie. Why not? It's just football.
Right.
Last night from the brief they look better man per man than they did last year. The quarterback is playing very good, very well, excuse me. So why not? That's what I would like to tell our football team. Why not us? Don't talk about it, be doers of the word. You know what I mean? It can happen, Stephen. All they just have to do is believe. You know, the pressure's on A&T. They're the D1 school. They're supposed to beat us.
Right.
All the pressure's on them. They lost last week, you know. So the pressure's on them. Play free and go get it. You never know. Coach Hayes used to have a whistle, a stopwatch. He was a psychologist. He would say, you know, a play only lasts about 6 seconds at the most. And he took this stopwatch out. Boom. He said, just focus on that 6 seconds. Bang. He said, you can't give me 100% for 6 seconds. And he had this stopwatch. And you know, that thing stayed in our minds like 6 seconds, guys. We can give 100% for 6 seconds. We were down to Fayetteville State at halftime. 6 seconds. He would use psychology on us. And it worked. It worked. So any Goliath can be slayed. So I would love to see Coach Massey and the guys go out and play hard. Nobody believes it but yourself, so you might as well give all the effort. Yourself as a team, and anything can happen. But A&T has some great gentlemen, great guys, great businessmen, great fathers that I've gotten to meet over the years, and some, and like I said, I sort of watched. They were from my hometown of Charlotte, and great guys, great program. So I think it's good for the universities, both of them, to have the rivalry, and it's just good for that whole area, Greensboro Triad area.
Yeah, no doubt. You know, maybe one day we can convince them to come back to Winston-Salem. They found their way back. They found their way back, you know, last week. I said, well, I'm glad you finally know where Winston is, but you know, we're on the other side of 52. But
Yeah.
you know, that's something else. But Mr. Bolton, I definitely appreciate you for taking this time out with us. I definitely plan on speaking with you again just to really talk about more about the history of WSSU football and what you guys started and the legacy that's been out there. So appreciate you so much for joining and being a part of this conversation as we look into this game coming up next week.
Well, Stephen, I've been a fan. I've been wanting to meet you for a long time, especially when I found out you were from the area where I worked for 30 plus years. And I watch your work, and you know, I want to just say continue to do your craft, and you're doing wonderful things for HBCUs, and keep God first, brother, and it'll be all right. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir. I definitely will do that. Once again, everybody, WSSU Ram Nation, big thanks to Mr. Randy Bolton, a WSSU legend, a champion, and a gentleman, and a leader. And we definitely appreciate him for everything he's done and continues to do for WSSU and the community.
Go Rams.